Evening, council, staff, and members of the public. Welcome to our August 4th regular council meeting. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that the council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7 p.m. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. I'd ask everyone to please stand for the playing of our national anthem. Kaylin, please. I'm sorry, Crystal, please. Okay, thank you, Crystal. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda. Any additions to the agenda, Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir. Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have a staff report on the Lang to amend a bylaw passed at our previous meeting. It will be coming as item 10 under new business. It will be staff report 118/2020. As well, we have moving from for information only to other business. Item 7D, the 2020 budget review. Item 2, the employee commendation for fire. Item 4, the resolution on Emancipation Day from Chatham, Kent, as well as the resolution investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant from the town of Amherstburg.
Okay, thank you. So those 4 will be added under other business. Is there any other additions to the agenda from members of council? Not seeing none, so the motion will be as amended. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, number 4 is any declaration of pecuniary interest? Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to declare again on the staff report 118, amending the bylaw. I declared it the last time, and it's an amendment for that sale. So I'll declare it again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Will be noted. Any other members of council have a pecuniary interest? Not seeing none. Number 5, the approval of the minutes. Have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council of the Township of South Glengarry held on July 20th be adopted as circulated. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Thank you. I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the minutes of the public meeting of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry held on July 20th be adopted as circulated. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to presentations and delegations. We have a proposed township office renovation. J.L. Richards and Associates. I'd ask the chief to introduce who will be speaking during the presentation, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council and the public. We'll follow this presentation up with the staff report on the same topic, but to introduce the team, the Township of South Glengarry is looking to possibly renovate the municipal office, and in that vein, we've procured the services of a design firm. That firm is the firm of JL Richards and Incorporated. They have full architectural engineering services and design services to fulfill the requirements of a recently tendered RFP that speaks to the renovation. So that is looking for different phases. The initial phase will be presented this evening to you and by the firm. It will speak to the initial design options and ideas that have been proposed by this firm. I'd like to introduce to you the two leads on the project, Orlando Barone and Brent Shaw, architects and designers with JL Richards. So what I'll do is I will go off audio. I'm going to share my screen for their PowerPoint slide, and we'll come back following the presentation with the staff report. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chief. I understand, Brett, you'll be the one that leading the presentation?
That is correct.
Okay, whenever you're ready and Dave's ready, there we go. So whenever you're ready, Brett, please.
Perfect. Okay, so first of all, just want to thank everybody for having us and taking the time to listen. So just before we get into this, we just want to note that we are at a preliminary design phase at the schematic phase. So it's very advantageous for us to get input at this stage, as it will reduce any need for later. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, Dave, next slide, perfect. So we're just gonna go through the background and the existing conditions of the existing office space, the architectural design intent for both options we are proposing. We'll talk a little bit about a mechanical and electrical design, opinions of probable construction cost and potential savings through this presentation. So next slide, please, Dave. So the existing space is approximately 2,000 square feet. It has a front entrance with an open concept reception area, an individual office adjacent to that reception area, and a large room adjacent to the front entrance that currently houses the council chambers. Next slide, please. So we'll go through option one first. The design concept provides 3 new consult rooms for the public and the municipal staff, a universal washroom, a waiting area with physical barriers, a reception area, 4 enclosed offices, 2 open workstation offices, and a large central corridor promoting physical distancing. The design will consist, at this stage right now, anticipated the following work and design elements: demolition of various interior walls, doors, and existing ceilings and lighting, new acoustic ceiling tile throughout with a new gypsum board ceiling in the universal washroom, a universal washroom with an adult change table, circulation that promotes physical distancing for the public and the staff, solid partition walls, new flooring throughout, and 4 new exterior windows to enhance natural lighting in the space. So we'll just quickly go through option one as if you were entering from the public entrance on the north face of the building, going from west to east. So if we walk in and you were to look to your west, you'd see a universal washroom with a door that swings inwards as to not project into the corridor to maximize space. Then there would be an adjacent secondary corridor, which would lead to a secure access point for staff to enter the staffing area. So that door would be on an electric strike, and you would have to swipe a card reader to get in, or whatever we sort of decide. After that, you would see consult room 1 that can house approximately 8 people. Consult room 1 would be good for internal meetings or larger meetings with the public. It provides 3 access points, 2 in the municipal staffing quarters and 1 for the public. This allows people to have multiple entrance points for also increasing the idea of social distancing. And then the public has its own dedicated entrance. And it also helps office staff. For example, if you're in office 1, you wouldn't have to go through the public domain or wrap around the entire building to access the room. The reception area is a glazed wall, so it creates an automatic wayfinding point. When you walk in the building, it is the only glass wall, so you can clearly identify where reception is, and it is directly adjacent to a waiting area with natural lighting. So the public would come in, simply go to reception, go in the waiting area, and then go into the consult room that they're required to be in. This creates sort of a zone for the public with this reception, waiting area, and consult rooms to reduce the need for the public and the municipal staff to overlap each other in sort of circulation. Again, just promoting physical distancing and separation while still accommodating visibility and identification of reception and where to go. Once you go through the reception door into the staffing area, that door will also be a secure door. You're provided with 3 fully enclosed offices with doors, 1 partially enclosed office, and 2 workstations with cubicles back to back. And this all sort of ends with this large corridor that's approximately 3.1 meters, allowing for two-way traffic with a large gap much greater than 2 meters. We've also installed 4 new exterior windows on the side, accommodating natural light for each office space and reception. Next slide, please. Sorry, oh, perfect. So we're going to provide new acoustic ceiling tile throughout and a new gypsum board ceiling in the universal washroom. Pretty basic, but it'll definitely modernize the look of the office. Next slide, please, Dave. So we can just go straight to the floor plan for this. Next slide, please. So for option 2, you have the exact same layout. However, 2 things have changed. One is that on the office and staffing side, you have 4 fully enclosed offices and 2 partially enclosed offices, creating a little more privacy and maybe a little more acoustical protection for each office occupant. And the greatest difference is the fact that most of the walls are glass walls. So this gives you a high level of visibility. What that does for the overall office is it increases safety. Everyone is transparent and visible. It increases collaboration. It increases visibility between all consult rooms and reception. So with this visibility and this transparency, you also generally get an overall higher quality aesthetic. It's a much more contemporary office, and it can increase safety just by simply everything being transparent. Next slide, please, Dave. So the difference in the ceiling between option 1 and option 2 is we do have a feature ceiling in consult room 1 and 2. They have gypsum board bulkheads edged around with pot lights that become essentially an architectural feature. It can seem like a small element, but it actually can make quite an impact. That gypsum board ceiling would be dropped slightly below the acoustic ceiling tile adjacent to it vertically. And with the glass walls and that vertical difference from entrance to any consult room to reception, these features would be visible from all throughout the space, which could be a very nice feature and definitely modernize the aesthetic of the office. And it would definitely create an inviting and welcoming presence when you walk in and see all this transparency, the people, the visibility, and these nice lights in this recessed and protruded bulkhead. Next slide, Dave. Thanks. So let's quickly talk about mechanical work. The intent is to replace both condensers associated with the existing gas-fired furnace, provide 1 ERV for ventilation, modify the ductwork distribution, and cut back and cap any ductwork as required. The offices will get acoustic return air transfer ducts to keep the acoustic levels with their wall assemblies, egg crate type ceiling return grills to sort of match the aesthetic of the ceiling and keep a seamless look, 1 transfer fan for consult room 1, and a floor grill and an exhaust fan for the universal washroom. So that would be sort of the extent of the mechanical work. The electrical work would be the disconnection and removal of the existing electrical infrastructure and equipment, communications infrastructure, all electrical connections on the mechanical equipment, and the removal of existing lighting. And we would provide new receptacles for all the working spaces, IT and telecoms conduit infrastructure, electrical feed and connection to the new mechanical equipment, conduit infrastructure for the secure doors, and new LED lighting throughout with vacancy sensors. So if you forgot to turn off the lights one night, it would turn off automatically. So talk about the costing quick. The opinion of probable construction cost for option 1 without contingencies is $203,000 approximately. And if you look at the contingencies below, the design contingency adds $40,000, that's 20%. Construction contingency is 15% at $30,000. And COVID-19 contingency is $10,000, making a total estimate, including contingencies, $284,306. Option 2 has an estimated cost without contingencies of $241,000. The design contingency 48, construction 36, and COVID 12 with the same percentages as option 1, with an estimated cost with contingencies of $337,000. So some other items with potential savings. We could conserve the existing flooring for approximately $12,000. We could conserve the existing ceiling tiles and suspension grid for approximately $8,000. Conserve existing lighting for approximately $2,500, and potentially salvage and reuse ductwork for about $10,000. So this would end up with a total estimated potential savings of $32,500. So just to quickly recap what we've gone through, option 1 has solid walls throughout. Option 2 has glazed walls throughout. Both have universal washroom. Option 1 has 3 fully enclosed offices, 1 partially enclosed office, and 2 working stations, while option 2 has 4 fully enclosed and 2 partially enclosed. They both have a large central corridor. They both contain 3 consult rooms with similar access. And option 2 adds the accent gypsum bulkhead with recessed lighting. So just double over the costing. The estimated cost without contingency is $203,000 versus option 2, $241,000. But if you included our potential savings in option 1, it'd be around $170,000. Oh, sorry, sir. I can't hear you.
No, sorry, I was talking to somebody else, but
Oh, no
Okay.
worries. Okay.
yeah, okay. So we're open for questions at this point, Brett. Is that what you're
Yeah, sorry. I was going to summarize with one thing.
right?
So yeah, just summarize these contingencies are fairly large at this stage in the game, especially with, we added a COVID contingency, for example, with labor and materials. At this time, it is a bit unpredictable, but this is a pretty typical conservative contingency at this point. But as we develop and potentially do a building survey, as been discussed later on, those contingencies will significantly drop in the upcoming stages. And also with a project of this scale, these contingencies are conservative. So I anticipate they will significantly reduce as we move forward into detailed design. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for your presentation. I'm sure there's going to be some questions from members of council. Dave, should we go right into the staff report first and then answer all the questions at the same time, or what's your recommendation?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is definitely an option. If council feels they would like to ask questions of myself, or if they would like to ask questions of our design team, then I would recommend that if that's the route, I would go through the staff report, introduce the staff report, and maybe yourselves as members of council can reach out to any of us for inquiries.
Okay, thank you. I just think it makes sense because we're just going to discuss it now, go right into the staff report and discuss it again. If Brett and Orlando have a few more minutes, if that's okay.
Yep.
That's fine.
Thank you. So we have moved right into staff report 106-2020. Mr. Chief.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I introduced before the presentation, currently phase 1 is complete as of tonight. The final requirement of phase 1 was to present to both council and the public options for a renovated office space at the municipal office. As part of the RFP, there are 2 following phases. Phase 2 would include the detailed design and final drawings that would be ready for construction tender and permitting. Phase 3 would be for consultative services on a per hour basis as needed during the during the construction phase. So with phase 2, a requirement for any project before it can go to tender, it needs to have building department or designs that meet the Ontario Building Code. And with that, our recommendation in this staff report would be to retain the services of JL Richards to complete that phase number 2. In the RFP, that was an option that would be proposed to council tonight, that if council wanted to move forward with phase 2, that would be your prerogative. So the recommendation of administration is that we retain JL Richards in the amount of $24,220 to complete phase 2 of the design process, which basically would be tender ready drawings, taking into account further consultation with staff and comments of council for direction. And I think at this point, JL Richards has done an excellent job in providing ideas and some of their input. They've done a very good job of consulting with us and taking some of our thoughts into that design. So that would be phase 2, but also phase 3, which would be a strictly consultative value in the amount of $130 per hour. That would be at the request of township administration. That would only in the event that where we feel that we need further guidance of their architectural and design engineering services. So with that, once again, I'll just recap. The recommendation of administration is to retain JL Richards for the amount I had mentioned, to complete both phase 2 for that value and phase 3 at a per hour rate as needed. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to questions or comments from members of council. Councillor Jaworski and then Councillor Lang.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my first question would be to Mr. Shaw and Mr. Barone, who thank you for your presentation. I'm with regards to, I mean, certainly it's a beautiful design. Certainly, I mean, I think it's, but perhaps there's certain additional aesthetic features that perhaps are out of the budget with the fact that we're, you know, looking at being more restrained because of COVID, et cetera. But my question to you is about the constraint, the contingencies. Typically, the presentations that these kind of documents that we receive, normally the contingencies are, you know, Class D estimates are normally plus minus 25%, whereas it seems that this one is more plus minus 40%. I know you said that it's fairly, these are conservative numbers, and so we could expect them to come down, but I guess if you could just talk a little bit more about why you think they're conservative and why you didn't just go ahead with having a contingency that's smaller.
Sure. So in the RFP, it was mentioned that we would receive existing drawings. And that was actually not a part of what we did end up receiving, which is fine. But that means that there's a lot of survey that, for example, for mechanical ductwork, we actually don't know exactly how the mechanical ductwork is running and operating due to the fact that we don't have existing drawings of the mechanical ductwork, which we anticipated we would. So we would need to do a lot more building surveying to understand what it would take to give a Class D estimate. Now that being said, architecturally, the quantities are pretty accurate. So it is conservative, I think largely for M&E, and a bit as we just don't have any existing base building drawings. So it's really hard to sort of pin down what might happen. So we're trying to be conservative. But if we had existing drawings, correct, you would be receiving a Class D estimate, and it would be a 25% contingency.
And if I may just reinforce with what Brett said, sorry. What we also would like to underline is that we would rather err on the side of caution at this point, because we're at a conceptual stage, because we don't have existing drawings, rather than provide contingencies that are too low. But the level of effort to perform that survey is not too great. So when we get to the next stage, I think you'll find that that estimate should be able to come down and those contingencies can come down. And also with the state of COVID-19, we've seen tender prices come in for certain elements such as concrete in a recent project twice as high as expected. So I'm not saying that's necessarily the case in South Glengarry, we hope not, but it's a bit of an unknown factor as well. So that's why we felt it would be better to be conservative at this stage rather than give you bad news later as we progress with the design.
Thank you. I did want to mention that I do very much appreciate in your design the focus on energy efficient lighting, the focus on upgrading the heating and the ventilation systems. I think that's, you know, having good guts to the building like that is very important. So those are things that I appreciate very much, and thank you for that. Mr. Mayor, if we have comments, like other comments that are sort of going on, like about the design or about how we would proceed forward, did you want me to hold those, or do you want me to ask those now?
No, I think the intent this evening would be, I presume, Dave, you want an answer at the end of the evening in regards to phase option 1 or option 2 at some point?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Our request of council tonight is, in essence, your view whether to proceed with phase 2 and phase 3 or cease the project entirely. I would request that all items as far as option or opinions on design, etc., unless you feel that they can be answered by our expert participating with us this evening, please forward those to me at a later time that we can tabulate all those and we can work together to come together with a final design.
Okay, Councillor Jaworski, are you comfortable with that, or do you prefer to share them this evening?
No, I can hold my comments about the option 1 or option 2, but I did have a question or comment about the process moving forward.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so for me, the overall cost of the project as it stands now, option 1 or option 2, is quite high. I think it's, considering the environment that we're in, we need to be very, I mean, we always have to be fiscally responsible, but in this case, perhaps considering this is also something that wasn't necessarily budgeted for this time, to start renovations on the building, I think we need to be even more restrained. So one thing I would like to explore is in terms of as we move, I do think we do need to do renovations. I think we do need to accommodate more staff at the township. But as we move forward, I would like us to explore the procurement process and ensure that we are able to include like small businesses as well as participating in this. I mean, with the procurement workshop that we had back in 2019, it was explained to us that we could have a process that preferentially treats a group of businesses, for example, small businesses. So I'm hoping that that is something that we could integrate in the process as we move forward, so that hopefully we would have more participation from small businesses and by extension also local businesses. And I'm hoping that this is something that we could also general contract ourselves as the township and not necessarily have to engage the full services of a general contractor to do this work. I'd like to think it's fairly straightforward what we're trying to do here, particularly if we have excellent drawings that are produced at the phase 2 phase. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll move to Councillor Lang, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you, Brent, for the presentation, and appreciate the work that's gone into it so far. I'm going to echo quite a bit of what Councillor Jaworski said. I'm happy with the way it's progressing and the drawings, and there are some comments I have, and I will definitely forward them on. My concern is obviously with the price, but I think we should continue on. I think we should get the drawings finalized at this point. I'm not definitely not saying at this point I want to go ahead with the project, but we're halfway through this process. Let's finish this process. We've budgeted for this process, and I think we can still come in under budget for the 50,000 we had budgeted to get everything drawn and have a plan to move forward at some point. And I would agree with Councillor Jaworski as far as I would like to keep this, get some local businesses. There's no reason that this work couldn't be done, with some smaller businesses in the community and help, get them up and running and booming after this COVID-19. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. I'll definitely put my thoughts forward, but I would like to see us move ahead with stage 2. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I agree with Councillor Jaworski and Councillor Lang that the conversations that we had, I guess, over the last couple of days is respect that we would like to see local contractors start getting some work here in the municipality, and that's the smaller contractors, I guess. So I think there's opportunities out there in regards to allowing them to bid on that tender. It's just a matter how we put out that tender or what we're going to do in regards to, allowing them to submit their costs, I guess, in respect to that. But that's at a later date. Right now, we're just here to look at phase 2, I guess, and phase 3. So I do have a motion on the table. I will read it at this point, and then if there's any other comments or questions, I'll take them. Okay, before that, I guess Councillor McDonnell does have a question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd actually just lowered my hand, but I guess it was a lot of echoing what Councillor Jaworski and Councillor Lang said. My only issue right now is with the price. I like the design, but I'll definitely pass on my comments for the next part of the phasing.
Okay, thank you. So I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that procurement 12-2020 Phase 2 be awarded to the firm of JL Richards and Associates in the amount of $24,220. That a contract administration cost of $130 per hour be accepted for the possible use in Phase 3. And further, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any relevant documents. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thanks very much, Brett and Orlando, for the presentation this evening. And Mr. Chief Robertson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sirs.
Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. And we hope to progress successfully to Phase 2.
Appreciate it. Thanks very much. Okay, we'll move to number 2, Charlene Arena reopening. Mr. Ladisar.
Hi, folks. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. So basically, the report, I think, speaks for itself that we had a very, very good conversation with the SDNG recreation directors, including Cornwall. And I did provide everyone with that information as well. We feel that we can forge ahead with the ice time based on starting September 8th and having ice time available by September 21st. I think it should be mentioned that we did reach out to all of the ice users, all of them, and the September 21st deadline or suggested date was very acceptable. I know minor hockey is currently working on a couple of options right now. As we know, figure skating is game to go, and so are we. We have made all the provisions we needed to do in terms of the ice plant, and we're making great progress there. And I just maybe wanted to point out one thing that, and I'm sure all of you know, my only reservation really is just based on the temperature. As we all know, September can be quite humid, quite hot. And our ice plant is not really equipped to handle that kind of temperature. And I think we just want to do a really good job in putting in the ice so that we don't have any blotches on the ice, and we're able to sort of nurture the ice as it needs to be, and that we'll have good ice for the solid year. So, in essence, that's the report.
Okay, thank you. And I understand from the staff report, there's more information coming at a later date. Is that correct, Mr. Ladisar, in regards to? Yeah.
That's
Okay,
correct.
thank you. Any comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Ladisar, for your report. I'm pleased to see this moving forward and in a very deliberate fashion, and it's good to see the process and the procedures that are being put in place. I wanted to just make a positive comment about how you're looking at compressing the ice time somewhat from what we do normally. And I hope that the user groups are going to work with you on that, and that they recognize that with the additional costs that we're going to be incurring to open the arena, with having additional staff on hand, that I hope everyone agrees that it makes sense that this is a sensible compromise about having having the one shift essentially ice time versus the 2 shift. So I wanted to thank you for that, and I look forward to the further information that will come on how how it comes down really in the details and how you'll be proceeding.
Thank you. If I may, Mr. Mayor, through you, I just wanted to say that everyone has been very cooperative in terms of the approach, and they really want to make this thing work. And by meeting with each of the groups separately, we want to put the proper protocol in place, and so that there's no surprises, and they can also inform their members as to when they come into the rink, what they can expect. And I think that's really, really important that we're working together. and minor hockey, figure skating, all of the groups have been very forthcoming in terms of their concerns and really want to cooperate. And I think that shouldn't go unrecognized.
Thank you. I'm very glad to hear that. That's wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing none, I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that staff report 107-2020 be received and the council approve the ice installation in preparation for opening. Staffing levels that will ensure health and safety and operational procedures as per the Eastern Ontario Health Unit guidelines and community user group guidelines. There's no other comments or questions. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ladouceur. Okay, we'll move to number 3, quotes for new council audio equipment. Lachlan and Kaylin.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, as the staff report notes, we reached out to 6 companies for new wireless conference system mics for our council meetings in the future. The microphone systems we looked for were ones that would allow us to easily record our meetings for broadcasting. We received 3 quotes at the time of the report's completion and a 4th since. The quote we have recommended from Baldwin Presentation Systems is, we feel, the strongest quote. This is also a company that one of our neighboring municipalities has worked with and gave us very good feedback. I met with the rep at our Tartan Hall location, and he's quite certain that what he is recommending is going to work in our space, and gave very good feedback on the equipment.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from council? The only question I have, I guess, at this point is as long as we have them early enough, I would like to try and get back into the arena as an open council in public, I guess, if we can, by their first meeting in September. We don't have another council meeting until then, but if we can be set up for that meeting, it would be greatly appreciated. I believe Councillor Jaworski had a question or a comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for your staff report. I just wanted to touch on and reiterate about how, because we'll be moving to Tartan Hall and how we want to have us be as seamless, our presence there be as seamless for the other users so that we displace as few user groups as possible. I just want to double check that all this equipment, it will basically not hinder or be easily removable so it doesn't impact the user groups.
Yes, Councillor Jaworski, through you, Mr. Mayor. All of the equipment is quite portable, so it'll be easily removed. It will be, the way it's being set up is with infrared receivers, so it'll give us a lot of versatility as far as how we are set up. Each microphone unit will have its own speaker, which should help if we have any interference from noise from the floor or the ice, as it were, depending on the time of year. And as well, the existing speakers in Tartan Hall will work well with the equipment. And it's also supposed to be quite user-friendly for myself and Clerk Compo when she returns to be using.
And would user groups be able to use the equipment potentially?
I think it's something we could discuss with our Director of Facilities. I think it is quite costly, so it might be something we'd require a deposit for. We wouldn't want anything to be damaged, but it's certainly something that could be discussed and used potentially.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing none. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that staff report 108-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry authorizes administration to purchase new council audio equipment from the Baldwin Presentation System at an estimated cost of $19,687.66. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move to number 4, budget set dates for 2021 budget. Mr. McDonald.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had spoken on April 20th and November 13th and 27th didn't work out at that time. I'm just trying to settle those dates so we can work backwards up from an administrative perspective and get our timelines in order. So I'm suggesting November 6th and November 20th, highlighted on page 35 of your council document. We'll do the usual 9 a.m. start. We'll include a lunch and just curious if those days work for everyone, and if they're open, we might as well tag them because people get busy as we get closer to the deadline.
Okay, thank you. I know we always did Friday to try and accommodate Councillor Jaworski, but I was just wondering at this present time if Wednesdays or Thursdays would work instead of Fridays. I think council would feel more comfortable if it was a Wednesday or Thursday. We could spend more time, and then a Friday evening going into the weekend. But that's just my comments. I don't know if you can comment that, Councillor Jaworski.
Certainly, right now, my travel schedule for work has greatly been reduced. But so I could be more flexible again if, knowing it well ahead of time, I can block the time. The issue is right now, as it stands, Fridays, I've always blocked off from work. So that it's easy for me, but certainly if it's much easier for the majority of council, considering I'm can be pretty flexible now, I can move it.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor Warden?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine with whatever date. Wednesday evenings are the only time that I am normally away, so whatever the majority chooses.
Thank you. Councillor Lang, Councillor McDonnell.
It's good with me. It doesn't matter which day.
Those Fridays are good for myself as well.
I'm sorry, the what? Sorry?
Those dates are good for me as well.
So we'll leave them as November 6th and November 20th, if that's the two Fridays.
We can
Okay.
go with those Fridays or
Okay, thank you. That's what it'll be. Go ahead, Lachlan.
I just like one administrative thing. I think the recommendation, I wrote it as 106. It should read 109 in your recommendation. If we can have
It
it.
does on the staff report.
I did correct that. Thank you, Lachlan.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 109-2020 be received and that the council of the corporation of the township of South Glengarry sets the dates for the 2021 budget for November 6th, 2020 and November 20th, 2020. If everybody's okay with that, all in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. And we'll move to number 5, surplus lands, Lancaster Heights. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you, and welcome council, members of staff, and the public. This report deals with properties that the municipality owns but has declared surplus in the past in Lancaster Heights. There is a larger parcel that we did post for sale through our procurement, our disposal of property bylaw in 2015. However, the offer that we had on that property did not meet the minimum requirements. We have been also selling lots in Lancaster Heights that the municipality owns over the past years, primarily by word of mouth. And we've sold 5 lots in the recent couple of years. Reviewing these properties that have been declared surplus and reviewing the policy for the disposal of property, it was discussed by administration and felt that we could exercise the option in the policy of using a higher level of disposal. And in this case, we are recommending that we do issue an RFP. There would be 2 RFPs, one for the 26 lots that are remaining, and they're shown on page 40 of your package, and another RFP for the larger parcel that's shown on the map on page 39. I should also point out that the map on page 39 does look a bit odd because there's a couple of sections that aren't shaded in red. Since this map was created, those properties are now municipal properties, and this parcel would include them, so we wouldn't be landlocking any property. So the recommendation is that we proceed to issue an RFP to secure the services of a realtor. The 2 RFPs would be issued and brought back to council for award, and then we would move forward with marketing and listing the properties for sale. As you'll see, the benefit to the municipality could potentially be quite significant to the budget, with probably in the neighborhood of $560,000 of revenue that I think would certainly be a welcome source of unfound revenue at this time. So the recommendation is that we proceed to issue the RFP for the realtor services. And I'm open to any questions on this staff report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Johan, thanks for this report. As you know, I'm a licensed realtor. I will not be trying to get work from the municipality. It's a huge conflict of interest. However, I do see the benefit and think it's something that council should consider. The only thing that I would like to see changed on this staff report is that I don't think that we should be limiting it to this specific land. I think the township should be wording the RFP to have a realtor on call should another land in the future be deemed surplus. I don't think, I don't know if you're able to, but I'm pretty sure other municipalities that have their go-to realtor, that if there's a transaction that's needed, I think it shouldn't just be for Lancaster Heights. I think it should be a realtor to work on behalf of the municipality for any transactions that may come up from time to time.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, the past practice of the municipality has to issue an RFP on a site-by-site basis. We have not to this point entertained having a realtor on what you would consider maybe similar to a retainer, if that was the wish of council. There are other municipal properties that have been declared surplus. I'm not entirely sure if this the approach the deputy mayor is suggesting would be the most effective, as there may be some different nuances to each property. But again, I don't know if that's entirely the case or not. But we would take direction of council as to how they would wish to proceed with this staff report on these properties and others, should they wish to look at those.
Thank you.
Subsequent, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I respectfully disagree with you, Owen. I think that if you have a realtor that is, that knows that they're going to get the business and through the RFP to select that person, I think you're gonna get them out there and they're gonna market the properties and they're gonna handle all the legal paperwork. And I think it's the direction that council should seriously consider. Again, I am a licensed realtor. I will not be applying for an application to apply, but I think it's something that council needs to consider. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do agree with Deputy Mayor Wharton in regards to, if we're going to get a realtor, then let's get him for all the municipal lands, or him or her, I should say, for all the municipal lands. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for your staff report. Certainly, I'm not as knowledgeable as my two colleagues when it comes to real estate matters, but I would expect that if this is land that we actually mean to sell, then we should actually have someone that's promoting it, and it's not just we making sales by word of mouth when people kind of hear that there's land available. I think it makes more sense to have someone whose job it is to help facilitate the sales of these lands and also to help ensure that we're marketing them at a price that's appropriate. I had a specific question about that. Is the price listing that we have now, is that appropriate, and what's the mechanism for having that increased if it's warranted?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jaworski, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The property was last, the property listing was last revised in 2015. Prior to 2015, the last revision on that property was in the year 2000. So I do suspect that we are not at the market rate for those lots in Lancaster Heights. So I think that is something that a realtor would certainly determine as a market value. Our policy, if we are posting internally properties, requires that we get an appraisal, but going to a realtor, we can avoid having those costs and have a realtor to determine the value of the property based on their knowledge of the markets. So, Mr. Mayor, if the consensus of council is that they wish to expand the scope of the properties that have been declared surplus by the municipality in the past, I would suggest, and perhaps the clerk could also step in here, I would suggest that we defeat this motion this evening, and I would bring back a staff report to the next meeting That would include a map showing all of the municipal properties that are declared surplus so that council has knowledge of where these properties are if you wish to know that ahead of time. If you do not wish to know that ahead of time, whether an amendment to the resolution to include all properties declared surplus, to issue an RFP for all of those properties as a single RFP, that's something I guess the clerk would have to give us advice on and input.
Sorry, we did, thank you, Mr. McDonald. We did change the staff report at this point to include all declared surplus lands for the municipality. So if council's in favor of passing this evening, we can do that. And then you could always you can get the RFP process going and get it started. And then you can bring back the map in respect of all the lands that the township owns once we come back in regards to deciding on what to go to your council is going to choose, or if administration is going to choose that. I think that would be appropriate.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so I will read the motion. If there's any questions, I'll take them at that point. I have a motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that the council of the township of South Glengarry receive staff report 110-2020 and council direct administration to issue an RFP for a realtor services for all properties declared surplus by the municipality. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Okay, we'll move to number 6, general insurance RFP results. Crystal? Mr. Run.
Hello, yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, staff, and members of the public. The township advertised an RFP for our general insurance requirements and risk management services with the closing date of July 10th. The successful insurer would provide services to the township for a 1-year term with a possible extension of 2 years based on satisfactory performance and service. Although we did receive several inquiries from various markets, we only received 2 proposals, and this is likely due to the current hardening insurance market, which has put the industry into a state of instability. And what that means is that some municipal insurers are reducing their coverage, they could be increasing their rates, and also reducing their willingness to write business. Lots of factors contribute to that, such as weather events, catastrophes, higher cost of construction, material and labor, and things such as that. So after careful assessment of the programs of the 2 proposals that we received, including the wordings and deductibles, we believe that while both insurers provided a very broad range of coverage, the proposal from Marsh Canada JLT does provide broad coverage at a lower cost to the municipality. So I have included a premium summary and a coverage comparison for council to analyze. And I've included it in the staff report, as you've probably seen. So the present coverage that we have now is based on a $25,000 deductible. However, council could consider increasing that deductible to $50,000 for savings of approximately $10,500. Council did agree to increase the deductible back in 2015 from $10,000 to $25,000, which saved the township $17,000 in the end. So I'm open to any questions that council may have at this time, and looking for your direction.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Councillor Lang, and then Councillor Deputy Mayor Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I'll agree with the thing. The only thing on that is I would leave the deductible at 25,000 for now. I think 50,000 is getting pretty high. You know, pretty soon we might as well self-insure if we're going to get too high. Anyway, that's my thought. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I agree. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden, then Councillor McDonnell, then Councillor Jaworski.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Martin. That was my comment as well in regards to the deductible. Crystal, in your previous career, you were in the insurance business. In your opinion, you know, it's a significant savings is there a significant decrease in the coverage? Like I read everything, but I'm just kind of asking your opinion. Do you feel like if we, went with Marsh, are we going to be adequately protected?
Yes. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden. I did do a thorough review of the coverage, the proposals that both companies provided. And I'm confident in saying that Marsh Canada GLT has us well insured. They're our company, and they've, I think we've been insured with them since 2012. There's actually, in comparing the two coverages, there are a few that GLT have in terms of replacement cost on the fleet vehicles. One of the big coverages that stood out when comparing the two is when you purchase a new vehicle, there's depreciation protection coverage that you can purchase on new vehicles. GLT wordings, their wordings indicate that we do not have to be the first purchaser or the original purchaser, where Frank Cowan, we do. So let's just say we buy a vehicle that is maybe 1 year old and has some mileage on it. We wouldn't be able to get replacement cost on that vehicle. It would be depreciated. So there's small things like that that maybe I have the benefit of knowing given my background. But it's those little tiny things that make a difference. I also think that we maybe got some better rates from GLT because we've been insured with them for so long, and they know our municipality as a risk. They know our entire overview portfolio. So I also think that was an advantage to us as well. But I am confident, to answer your question, I'm very confident with if we were to stay with GLT and Marsh that we are adequately insured.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my only comment was on the deductible. I didn't want to see us going to 50,000. I'd like to stay at the 25.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. LeBrun, for your presentation. And it's an asset to us that you have this previous experience, able to make sense of insurance. I had one question just because now that we have a new director of recreation and facilities, that perhaps it might make sense to look at the rec user, the facility policy piece that was dropped in 2018, perhaps, depending on that we're hoping to grow the use of, community centers across the township. Maybe that's something we should look at again. And also one thing, and I apologize, this just sort of came to mind, is, we do have other groups running out of our facilities, sort of like at the Nor'Wester Museum, those groups that also have to get insurance for themselves. So whatever we can do, I think, to use our buying power as the township to help our user groups, I hope we can explore. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Jaworski. I think that in discussion with staff today, including Rick or Mr. Ladouceur, we are going to proceed with the analysis of the facility user policy to see how it will benefit our users and if it would be worth purchasing. There's still some information that I'm waiting on from the insurance company, but I believe we'll be able to prepare a staff report for the next council meeting with some options.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved that staff report 111-2020 be received, and that the council of the township of South Glengarry directs administration to renew their insurance with Marsh/JLT for a 1 year period, and furthermore that the mayor clerk be authorized to sign all of relevant documents. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. LeBrun. And we'll move to number 7, the ICON program. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On July 9th, the province of Ontario released guidelines and announced the new program for improving cellular and internet coverage called Connectivity for Ontario program. The province will support the expansion of both broadband and cellular infrastructure by investing $150 million over 4 years through this new program. The ICON program will promote industry partnerships to encourage solutions that will bring improved internet coverage to our community with increased speeds of at least 50 megabits per second download and 10 megabits per second upload. And in some of our areas, that could be a significant increase. We have a two-stage application process. So stage one will determine if a proposed project meets program requirements. And if so, then applications would be permitted to permit a submission for stage two, which would have a much more detailed assessment of the project. And the details of those requirements for the project are included in my staff report, but I won't get into all of those particulars at this time. So the deadline for stage one is August 21st, 2020. And if we're unable to apply for August 21st, we can also apply for the second intake, which is indicated as early winter 2021. So just to update council on what we've done to date for this program. This program came up quite quickly, but we've done quite a bit of work so far. So to date, we've had meetings with 3 different service providers in our area, being Bell, Xplornet, and Cogeco. And the meetings have been really worthwhile, both in terms of understanding what options there may be for this ICON program. And if we're not able to move forward with the program, we're learning more from these companies about what they're doing for our community in general, just in terms of improving either their infrastructure or different programs that are becoming available. And with that, it'll give us opportunities to provide updates to our connectivity committee in the future as areas are going to improve. One of the concerns is $150 million. Like, it sounds good, but across the province is not a ton of money. And the province will only fund up to 25% of the project costs. So at this time, as of today, we don't know if we will actually be submitting an application for August 21st. It's possible that we may be successful in partnering with Xplornet. Cogeco has come up with an option, but we don't believe it's a feasible option, both in terms of the area they're proposing to cover, as well as the costs that are going to be associated with it. However, we're going to continue working with them to determine how we should proceed. There is no council meeting between now and August 21st. So the purpose of this staff report is not only to inform council of the program, but to ask council for their support on our efforts to continue working with these providers to be ready for an August 21st submission if possible, as well as to provide a letter of support from administration on behalf of council. And the reason for that is because every application has to include a letter of support from the municipality. One thing I'd like to point out to council is at this time, we have no obligation to provide any financial commitments. In 2020, we did not budget for any of these dollars. However, depending on the projects as we move forward, it could be possible that we may need to ask council to include funds in the 2021 budget, or maybe council may want to consider starting kind of a reserve fund for improved connectivity, being either cellular, internet, or natural gas, just to start collecting some dollars in case other projects were to arise in the future. So one other item I'd like to point out is if we are proceeding to file something with the August 21st deadline, we would be including and working with our connectivity committee, possibly scheduling a meeting the week of the 17th. And we do have 2 members of council on that committee. So we would be able to keep council members apprised that way, and obviously inform you if we're proceeding with an application. So is there any questions at this time or any concerns with the work that we're doing?
Okay, Councillor McDonnell.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks, Ms. Haley, for your presentation. it's always, I guess, nice to see the provincial government holding up their end of the deal, even if it isn't always the largest amount of money we're hoping for. I guess I wanted to speak in regards to something Ms. Haley brought up, being looking at starting a reserve fund for the expansion of whether it's natural gas or internet connectivity cell service in our municipality. The way things have been going, as Ms. Haley said, we get these grants come down the line, but they don't always add up to a whole lot of help for some of these companies. And every time we've met with the direct service providers, I think they've always said it's always the money that's the biggest issue. So looking at either debenturing it doesn't always work because you have to get everybody on line with that, and it's tough to make that work. So I think Ms. Haley's comment to potentially starting to treat connectivity in general as an asset to the municipality, such as roads and bridges, the way we treat them would be a wise move. Just a forewarning, I guess, looking at it as, even if we spoke about budget tonight, but I think that's one of our biggest factors right now about moving this forward.
Okay, thank you. I agree. I would like to move forward also. Any other comments or questions from members of council? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Haley, for your presentation. It's good to see that you're able to move quickly when something comes like this quickly at us. And I just want to echo what Councillor McDonnell said, that I absolutely agree that I think we need to start looking at connectivity as how we look at other infrastructure. I mean, if there's one thing, you know, the top issue that residents would talk to me about is about the lack of, you know, internet connectivity, and that's just been exacerbated now during, you know, COVID-19. So I think it would, you know, make a lot of sense for us to look very seriously at setting up a reserve fund so that we can be ready for when these other programs come down the pipe. And I'd like to expect that there'll be more, but that they'll be ready. We'll be ready to move quickly and be a winning candidate when these projects come. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Haley, does this go along with what EORN is doing, or are we kind of duplicating what they're doing? Is that?
So to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not sure I'm going to answer this really well, but my understanding in working with EORN, they are not pursuing funding from this type of project simply because they're going to be concentrating on accessing dollars from the federal government. I also understand that our county council was updated on this program at your last county council meeting, and our county had also decided not to file an application for this program, that they too would be supporting EORN's initiatives. And it's difficult for me to speak to EORN's initiatives in terms of the other federal funding that's available, but it is a much bigger project, or has a larger pot, and it's a much bigger project that would probably do best in serving Eastern Ontario in comparison to this project with the dollar value that's allocated.
Okay,
I just feel with the needs in our community, though, it was something that we couldn't dismiss. That is something that we had to research, given the, you know, the commitment we made to council that we would pursue, you know, any initiative possible to make improvements to our community. We really felt it was best to put that effort in.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor Warden.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Joanne, thank you for your presentation. I do like the idea of, I guess we're at the forefront of it, is exploring, you know, making connectivity one of our assets to manage. I think there's, if anything, this pandemic has taught us is how valuable the high-speed internet is. So I think maybe there's some merit to that. And I don't know how, maybe if the connectivity committee can, or somewhere, explore the option of, you know, setting aside some funds and making it a long-term asset, and, you know, budget for replacement and stuff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that staff report 112-2020 be received, and that the council of the township of South Glengarry supports administration in their efforts to determine if a partnership with a service provider is possible in order to improve high-speed internet services and authorizes administration to prepare a letter of support on behalf of council. Other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Haley. And number 8 is longevity site plan control agreement. Ms. Haley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's nice to see development happening within our municipality and especially in our commercial and industrial sectors. Longevity Acrylics is located at 6861 Richmond Road. They're quite a large business in our community, and they're looking at constructing 2 additional warehouse buildings on their subject property, which triggered the requirement for site plan control. So you'll see in the site plan attached that one building is much larger than the other building, but it's still nice to see the expansion that's going to occur on that site. There's a couple things that I'd like to point out to council. In the agreement, there's a new section in there that we don't typically have, and it's called an acknowledgement section. And the reason why we have the acknowledgement section in this agreement is simply because we have to look at adequate water supply for the purposes of firefighting provisions to ensure that we're able to fight a fire adequately and protect the adjacent properties if something were to occur on that site. And so in there, we have an acknowledgement that we will be working with the provider, or excuse me, with the property owner to ensure that they can provide adequate water supply sometime in the future upon the request of the township. And that's something I just wanted to point out to council in case that was brought to your attention either by the property owner or you're hearing it through the community, as this isn't something we're always dealing with in our site plan control approvals, either because it's not needed or because there's adequate fire provision or a sprinklered building or those things. Other than that, the remainder of the agreement is very standard in comparison to all of our other agreements when it comes to commercial additions or industrial additions in this case. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to any questions or comments. This is the exact one that we went through with Committee of Adjustments a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
So if there's no questions or comments, I have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Martin Lang. Be resolved that staff report 113-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry approves bylaw 48-2020 and the site plan control agreement for the property legally described as part of lot 12, concession 1, front in the geographic township of Schlottenburg, also known as 6861 Richmond Road, and authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan control agreement. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Haley. And one more for you is the Cornwall Roof Trust, Inc. site plan control agreement.
Thank you. So this application and staff report is very similar to the longevity location. Cornwall Roof Trust is located at 900 Boundary Road. And they're also proposing to do an addition to an existing structure. It's approximately 3,000 square feet in size. They too were subject to a minor variance process that council may recall, which we dealt with very recently. And when you look at this agreement, we have a similar acknowledgement in this agreement also pertaining to firefighting provisions. The wording in this one is a little slightly different, simply because a building permit will be issued on this property. We will not hold up the issuance of the building permit as we want them to be able to proceed with their construction, but we are asking that water supply be provided on site for the purposes of firefighting provisions prior to occupying the new proposed addition. And that's because there's more of a need for water in that location at this current time. Other than that, this would be a very standard agreement for a commercial addition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Warden.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Joanne, Ms. Haley, pardon me. Can you explain that? So what are they going to be, how much extra dollars is this going to end up costing them to do the small addition?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In the Ontario Building Code requires you to be able to provide water supply on site for the purposes of firefighting provisions. And we could have held up the permit until the provisions were available. But in this case, our building staff worked with our fire chief and decided to proceed with issuing the permit subject to a condition that they provide these fire provision services prior to occupancy. In this case, they may be required to dig a pond on the property. There's not a lot of space on it, but it gives the the property owner the ability to look at it, or maybe it's an underground storage tank. They do have a well on the property, but they would need to prove what the water quantity is in that well to ensure that it's meeting the Ontario Building Code. So this just buys some time for our fire chief and our building staff to work with them, as opposed to holding them up and not allowing them to do their addition this year.
And this is all through the building code.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And I think, as we're all likely thinking, this is another reason for us to get something going on Boundary Road sooner rather than later. To hold up these businesses and cost them extra money, that they shouldn't have to spend if we could get this serviced. Thanks.
Councillor Lang, our fire chief used almost those exact words exactly today.
Yeah, I think we all agree to that, so thank you. Okay, I have a motion moved by Stephanie Jaworski, seconded by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that staff report 114-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry approves bylaw 49-2020 and the site plan control agreement for the property legally described as part of lot 18, concession 2 in the geographic township of Schlottenburg, also known as 900 Boundary Road, and authorizes the mayor and clerk to execute the site plan control agreement. Any other questions or comments? Not seeing none. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mrs. Haley.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to number 10. Mr. Deputy Mayor, this is the one that you disclosed pecuniary interest in. So staff report 118-2020. Mr. MacDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This is essentially a bit of a housekeeping on the bylaw that was passed at the last council meeting for the sale of one of the lots in Lancaster Heights. It became apparent afterwards, we became knowledgeable just today, in fact, that there was a discrepancy between the legal description that we had on our GIS system through VATM and the actual legal description of the lot as it is registered with the registry office. So this is essentially just to ensure that our bylaw is consistent with the legal description as per the registry office. So it is rescinding the bylaw that was passed at the last meeting and replacing it with this bylaw with the proper legal description of the lot that was sold.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from members of council? Not seeing none. I do have a motion moved by Martin Lang, second by Sam McDonnell. Be resolved, staff report 118-2020 be received and that the council of the Township of South Glengarry rescind bylaw 45-2020 and that bylaw 51-2020 being a bylaw to approve the sale of part lot 7, concession 9, part 45 14R-2974 in South Glengarry, part lot 7, concession 9 Lancaster, as in AR 140241, South Glengarry, part lot 7, concession 9, part 44 14R-2974, South Glengarry, be read a first, second, third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 4th day of August 2020. And furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign any relevant documents. You heard the motion. All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Okay, we'll move on to other business. So the first item was the 2020 budget review. I'm not sure who was that. Councillor Jaworski, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. McDonald, for putting together the 2020 budget review. And now I recognize that we don't have all the information yet. We're still, we're halfway through the year, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're halfway through all the information on our expenses coming through. So I guess where I'd like to get from you right now is, I kind of have 3 main questions. So like, how are we trending? Can you say at a high level, if you think we're trending well, that we shouldn't have any, surprises? Also, like in the data that you provided, are there any notable, invoices or expenses that haven't been captured? And lastly, like when can we expect a bit more of a detailed review on how we're trending for 2020.
Okay, thank you. So on the overall high level view on how we're trending, I'm not concerned at this point. There are a few items you'll note that are over budget. One, not to pick on roads. I think there's roads resurfacing, but for loose top, I'm just trying to find the right one and give you the page number so I can be helpful to you. So on road maintenance, page 93 of 109, you see loose top resurfacing is $7,000 over, but at the same time, loose top grading and dust control are under budget by a large amount. So those ones sometimes go in tandem, like one's a little higher, one's a little bit lower. They're kind of similar activities. So that's not too concerning. In a little bit of a further review, I saw our consultant fees for administration, and this level of detail isn't provided in this report, would be trending higher. And then miscellaneous roads construction are two that kind of will warrant further conversation. Some of that could be just activities coded to the wrong account, but we'll look into those. Notable invoices or expenses that are outstanding at this present time are none. That being said, we have a few big projects that are in our budget not completed. I believe William Street's about 1.2 million, and this snapshot in time as of July 22nd, we had 168,000 spent. We also have money for the roads garage and the fire hall that have not been spent, obviously, as we're continuing to move those forward slowly. As for when more information will come, likely the first or second meeting of September, and that one will look more like that 2019 review where I include the staff reports as well as details into like this one. If I'm still on page 93, say hard top sweeping, for example, that 20,000 or that's 22,000 budget, 20,000 or 20,290 actual. That number might have 4 or 5 numbers. So where there are variances, I'll go through those line by line items and explain them for items that are significant, keeping in mind that in any given year, we can be over and under by small amounts, but I'll focus on the big amounts, and it will be similar to the 2019 review that was, I don't know if that was last council or the council before. So that's a level of detail you get. And I say the first or second meeting, it's probably going to be the second meeting of September. You'd get that information.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. We'll move to the employee one in regards to fire. I believe that's Councillor Jaworski again. And Councillor Lang. Sorry, Councillor Lang, I guess.
Yeah.
Yep. My apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I just wanted to bring this forward. I wanted to acknowledge it in open council, and just that we have 2 firefighters that are being recommended for or been accepted for police commissioner's commendation. And I just wanted to make sure that we, said thank you publicly. And I was at the call that where this incident happened, and Mr. Hicks and Mr. Sangster went in and brought this individual out. And I know myself that if they hadn't done what they did, this would have ended very badly. So just wanted to make sure we were saying thank you publicly, and it's quite something that we've got at the fire service we have. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Thank you, Mr. Lang, for bringing that up. I was going to have a conversation with Chief Robertson in respect that when they do receive their certificate or award from the appropriate OPP, I believe it was. Is that where they're receiving it from?
Yes.
If whatever that date is, I would maybe after that have them come into council chambers, I guess, if we can, and sometime in September to acknowledge them in public if we can. So if you keep us updated with that, Mr. Robertson, that would be great. Okay, and number 4 is resolution Chatham-Kent. Councillor Jaworski, is that yours too?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
that would be me. Okay, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this one, comes back to the events in the U.S. with George Floyd and his death at the hand of law enforcement in Minneapolis, and then all the marches, the anti-racism marches that event ignited. I'd say, generally speaking, there's a real growth in people wanting to become more knowledgeable and more educated about different, relationships we have in Canada, like Indigenous relations, history of minority groups, and particularly the history and the present of Black Canadians. And so I, speaking for myself, I was peripherally aware that there must have been slavery in Canada, but I couldn't have told you really when or how widespread it was. Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with the stories of the Underground Railroad, but really that story is not complete if we don't understand that there was slavery in what was, Lower and Upper Canada, and that it was only abolished in 1834, which is quite some time ago. But as we know, our history here in South Glengarry is even longer than that. It's not that long ago. So, and I was also unaware that Ontario is the only province that officially recognizes Emancipation Day, which is what the date recognizes when slavery was abolished across the British Empire. And so Ontario recognized it in 2008. So I would like to support Chatham-Kent's resolution and they're supporting a current private members bill in Parliament that's officially designating August 1st as Emancipation Day in Canada. I think it's strongly that's an event and it's a history that we should recognize across the country, not just in Ontario. And I think it provides a focal point to have, meaningful commemoration and meaningful conversation about Canada's history and that of Black Canadians.
Okay, thank you. So we'll ask the clerk to bring the resolution back in the September meeting, if that's okay, Councillor Jaworski?
Yeah, that would be fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And you might as well stay on because yours is the resolution investing in Canada Infrastructure Program grant.
Sure. Yeah, thank you again. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I know this actually came before, it was an information report last council, but I think I kind of missed it. And now that the township of Amherstburg is circulating their support of it, I took a second look because basically it's a town of Renfrew is asking for the federal government and the provincial government to, do a better review and processing of the Canada infrastructure grants. They, like many places, including us, have made applications to those grant programs and they're waiting on approvals. And now with the hopefully coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, being able to put some of those projects, getting the shovels in the ground for those projects could help do a lot of stimulus, and particularly in rural areas. So I would like to support the town of Renfrew in their original resolution.
Okay, thank you. Did we approve that one in the last council meeting? That was on the agenda, but we didn't do anything with it, right?
Yeah, it was on the July 6th agenda.
Correct, okay. So can we bring that one back, I guess, in regards to supporting the motion from Renfrew?
Yes.
Okay, so that'll be brought back at the first meeting in September.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So number 8 is unfinished business. Docks on township property. We will be discussing that in closed in a few minutes. Mr. McDonald, fire protection ponds. Step out for a second. Oh, there you are. No, you're on mute. Nope. Okay.
Okay, sorry, I've lost my visual, but on the unfinished business, fire protection pond, I have had a contact with the active property, and we're hoping to meet sometime in the next couple of weeks for Richmond Road.
Okay, thank you. And municipal servicing from the city of Cornwall.
We're developing the cost for Boundary Road. We had a meeting last Thursday with the consultant to review some of those costs that they've developed. There's a few modifications we're going to be making, and then we'll be meeting with the property owners to discuss the project costs.
Okay, thank you. And private road development document.
Nothing further on that at this moment, Mr. Mayor.
And Williamstown Garage and Fire Hall.
Nothing. We're working on the road optimization study. All of the information has been provided to the consultant to compile the information. The next stage will be consultation with staff on the winter plow routes.
Okay, thank you. And LED streetlights for Glen Walter.
The Cornwall Electric has advised us that they are continuing their review of the infrastructure, and we should have something from them hopefully by the end of August at the latest, preferably before that.
Okay, and number 7 is the Glen Walter Looping Project.
Yeah, there's an error in the report. It should basically be that the looping project is nearing completion as far as the tender documents. We'll be issuing the tender in mid-August for both the looping and the upgrades to the Bray Street pumping station.
So the looping and one surface treatment, or one surface on the road just before the winter hits, is that the goal?
That is our goal, Mr. Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions for Mr. McDonald while he's on? Councillor McDonnell?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Yoan, can you remind me what was the rough dollar figure we figured it would cost the looping project? What did we budget in there?
For the looping in the Bray Street pumping station, off the top of my head, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $800,000. But perhaps Mr. McDonald could provide.
I think you're actually right, Mr. McDonald. That's what was coming off my top of my head, was 800,000.
Yeah.
Okay, no, I was just wondering there. I
Okay,
was more or less, my concern was, are we is it RFP, or are we going to a tender with a bond on it?
A project of this size would be a tender, and we would be advisable to have a bond, yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. McDonald, I know it's not in an unfinished business, but just for my own interest, I'm just wondering if you could give us a very brief update on how the roads treatment is going this year. I've been down the second concession, or Cedar Grove and Maple, and both look good. It's nice to see those 2 roads are finished, or it looks like they're finished to me. The only thing, I hadn't seen anything happening with the Glen Road, that 1 mile stretch in the middle there. Just wondering if we're still on schedule and how it's going. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lang, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the Cedar Grove and Maple Road Maple Road projects, the surface treatment has been completed. We do have some driveway tie-ins that we will have to do once the surface treatment has cured. The Glen Road is a asphalt project, so it's a different contractor, but their tentative schedule is to be there on Thursday this week to do that 1 kilometer overlay. I'm suspecting with the weather that might push them off a day or 2, or perhaps into the start of next week, but it's days away, not weeks away now for the Glen Road project. So that would be our road resurfacing projects completed for the year.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So move to community services, Hamlet signage policy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you'll see in the update that we're still waiting on the sign provider, it is possible that we may choose not to wait any longer and finalize a draft for September. And if we choose not to wait, it simply means that the policy won't include exact sizing or the Pantone colors, but we feel we're waiting long enough and we need to move forward with this project.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, thank you. And Mr. McDonald, the review of water rates and water bill design.
Yes, not much to change. We're just crunching numbers. I should say Marco's crunching numbers. There's one question he has outstanding of me based on his most recent round, and then we'll come back to council. If I can touch on the water question earlier, I just jumped into Vadim while I'm here. We had budgeted, so this is the looping project and Bray Street pumping station. So Bray Street pumping station, we had budgeted 810,000. Glen Walter looping, we had budgeted 650,000. And then there was a generator, which I believe we took off because we saw it could wait. So those were the prices that we had, or the budgets we had for those 2 items.
Okay, great, thank you. I have a motion that I should have read before we went to unfinished business, but I'll read it now. Motion moved by Lyle Warden, second by Stephanie Jaworski. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry accepts the items presented on the agenda as committee reports for information purposes only. All in favor of the motion? That motion's carried. Thank you. And number 9 is closed session. I do have a motion moved by Sam McDonnell, second by Lyle Warden. Be resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry convene to closed session at 8:34 p.m. to discuss the following items under Section 239 of the Municipal Act. A meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is a proposed pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Staff report 115-2020, Glen Walter waterfront lots. Labor relations of an employee negotiation, staff report 116-2020, and staff reports 117-2020. All in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. It is now 8:34. If we 8:35, we can come back by 8:40. That would be great, please.
I would just ask anyone not participating in the closed session to please leave at this time. Thank you.
Good night, all.